199 people lost their lives in construction-related incidents in 2018. That is a shocking statistic. That number is a lot higher than I ever thought it would be when I started researching for this presentation. That number, statistics can lose a little bit, so let's look at just one individual case. This is a picture of Patrick's parents. So Patrick was a 17-year-old who died in a construction incident in North Falls or Grand Falls, New Brunswick. Here is a picture of their parents holding their son's photo. In the video here, what we're seeing is a virtual reality interface. I'll talk about what this kind of interface is showing later in the presentation and similar videos. But the purpose of this presentation is to explain how we can use virtual reality to increase the construction safety on sites. And we want to bring that number from 199 all the way down to 0. We want to have no construction related fatalities on sites. And we can use virtual reality to as an add-on to what we already do with our safety to get as close to that number as possible and ideally getting to that 0 number. I am the ideal person to talk about this. I'm an expert in virtual reality. I have over 17 years experience in design and construction, working in architecture and interior design firms, and spending a lot of time on site while working for those design build firms. Recently, I worked with a company, a design build company, to bring in a workflow where they would be able to show the construction team how they can view the design in 3D. They can get the drawings to develop into real pieces and have an over and backwards and forwards, so they can explore the actual construction before they build it and see those problems in advance. This all leads to a smoother construction experience. Another aspect that makes me an expert in virtual reality, I wrote the first VR workshop for architecture and interior design at a BCIT, where I teach in a number of different programs. So that adds to my ability to talk about this topic. A quick outline of this presentation, I'm going to go through what is virtual reality, how is it currently used in the construction industry, and then how can we get more safety on construction sites using VR, and finally why VR is a lifesaver. So what is virtual reality? The way it's most commonly used at the moment is in video gaming. In this video, you can see that this person has put on a headset, they have some controls, and they're fighting some kinds of monsters. This is a very immersive kind of situation. So people are in there, they're playing games, and people will pay to do these kind of things. It costs hundreds of dollars to buy the hardware, maybe even up to $1,000 to buy the hardware, and then you're buying games, your internet connection, so on. It's a huge amount that goes into this. And what people enjoy about it is the immersive nature of it. It's like you're really there. You're seeing these things in first person. So that's kind of the industry leader in virtual reality. Gaming is the industry leader, where you feel like you're really in that space, whether that's a realistic space or some kind of cyberspace or outer space like we're seeing right here. In the construction industry, virtual reality is almost exclusively used on the design side. So drawings are no longer drawn on paper, and they're in a lot of cases they're modeled in computer software that allows you to create a virtual equivalent of the real building. And then when you get into virtual reality, the temptation for designers is just to show what the building looks like. They would share that with a client to try and sell their design. They would look at it maybe from an energy saving point of view. They would look at it from an aesthetic point of view and try to put it all together and just see what it could look like. That's kind of what VR is used for in the construction industry at the moment. It doesn't really go much beyond the aesthetics. It just looks kind of cool. It's a bit of a wow. So you get to move around it, kind of like we see here. Yeah. But there is a movement to use it in construction. So one company that used to actually develop computer games moved into using virtual reality for safety. So here's a scenario for safety. You can understand how you would never be able to have an exploding truck in an actual safety scenario because the obvious implications to people's health. But if you're in a virtual reality situation, you can put someone in a dangerous situation where they have to come, choose what kind of gear they're going to put on for themselves, go up there and actually stand on the scaffolding, say hello to the other people on site, and while they're all just still standing in a little room, maybe at home or maybe in your office. So in this case, they're clipping on to the scaffolding, but unfortunately they didn't look where they're going. And this person ended up falling a long way. And then it comes up immediately with a statistic of how many people have died in the last year from falling from heights. I think this is an American statistic. So that kind of immersive environment that you can get is key to these to the safety experience. So traditional safety on site, which I think we should still keep, and I think it's still very valid, is standing around a tool chest at maybe 7 in the morning, having a quick chat about the safety issues, and then off you go. But you can never really feel that issue. So I think there is probably two places that this virtual reality should take place. One would be in post-secondary where people are learning about the trade and they can get the basics of safety. And then maybe some specific ones that would deal with how you would deal with safety on your site or specific kind of ones that you've run into. This doesn't have to be expensive technology. This headset that I have here that you add your mobile device into costs $15. This one, which is made out of cardboard, costs $10. So these are very, very affordable solutions that you could incorporate. Finally, what's the statistics behind it? Well, I found a number of studies, and this study is probably the one that gives the most from Sachs, Perlman, and Bourke. They're faculty experts in engineering construction from post-secondary institutes in Israel. So from their study, they found out that VR created a significant advantage for some types of construction. So it's not going to be perfect for every single situation. So you would have to look at the appropriate use of it depending on the trade, depending on the building and the use of it. But there was a significant advantage for some construction work. It was a lot more effective. You can see how engaging that is when you're in those situations. So a lot more effective than traditional methods of face-to-face talking and explaining or showing a PowerPoint presentation. And then the training was more effective over time. They found that people held on to that safety, those safety measures for a longer period of time after the initial training. Okay, so that's kind of the end of the presentation. Feel free to ask any questions you'd like about construction safety. Who wants to ask the first question? What's that? Oh, so you think there's no way this could work in your firm? Thanks very much for your question. Could you tell me your name and the type of work that you complete? Your name's John, and you build single-family homes. Thanks very much, John. So, what specifically are you worried about for VR on your sites? Okay, there's no substitute for on-the-site training. That's what you're saying. There's no way to substitute it. That's what your observation is. I would completely agree with you. In this presentation, I'm not suggesting that we substitute VR for real construction. What I'm saying is we use them hand in hand. So we continue to do safety that you're already doing, but what we would also do is add virtual reality onto it, where we would have situations where, let's say, it's not practical for you to bring everyone up on scaffolding, and maybe the scaffolding isn't available at that point for people to go up. But you could have VR situations where people are in those scenarios, and they could even do it in advance of arriving to the site. And then they would have some guided things they have to do, so that it would help what they already know. And then when you're doing that face-to-face trailer talk, you would be able to talk about it, refer back to the VR things that they've done, and even make a bit of fun out of it, where you'd say, I think 3 of you managed to die a handful of times before you realized what you should do in those situations. So I'm glad you virtually died rather than, so you could have a little bit of fun with it, but you're also relating it back to the site at all times. So I think you're absolutely right. We do not suggest at all reducing the amount of on-site safety training that you do. This is just to add to what it is. Does that address your concern? It does? Awesome, great, thanks very much. Okay, so some of the citations. So if you want to look at them, I'll just leave this slide up for a moment. And if you have any more questions or concerns you'd like to talk to me one-on-one about, feel free to approach me afterwards and we can chat, or you can get in touch with me. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.